This is Stephanie with Hightower Stitching. Today's quilt block is the log cabin 14-inch with partial seams. The purpose of today's show is to show you how partial seams can make making a log cabin block a lot of fun. Here's where we want to go. This is one 14-inch log cabin block. A show ago, we did a partial seam in one of our blocks. And I got a new magazine, a McCall's, for this month, for 2021, this year. And it was really funny because usually I let them sit for a while and don't pick them up. But the other afternoon, I just picked it up. And the first or second quilt that I came to, the quilter had used the partial seams in several places in the log cabin block. I had never seen doing that, and I thought, well, I'm going to give it a try, because one block I can do and see if I do like it. And it was pretty neat. If you're a beginning quilter in particular, you'll like this. If you're experienced, you'll like it, because it's kind of a shortcut to doing it. If you'll notice, each of the strips are 2.5 inches wide, and that's fine. Now, in the traditional log cabin block, you find that the sides are different lengths, and you have to cut a variety of those. Well, in this block that we're doing, it's a 2.5 by 2.5 center. We've got 2.5 by 4.5, 2.5 by 8.5, and 2.5 by 12.5. When I chose my materials, I'll show you that in just a second, but I want to say too that if you'll notice, I have a darkish color and then the light, a darkish color and a light, and a darkish color and a light, because I'm going to do a traditional look to that log cabin. If you remember back over here, traditionally, one side, like the top part that's got all the red, is darker, and then the bottom side is lighter. And it can be turned any way when you get ready to put them together, but that's the traditional way. The quilter in the magazine was a long arm quilter, and she was quilting this log cabin with the partial seams, and she noticed those when she was working, and she had said 16 years she had been doing what she did, and she'd never seen that. And so she decided to try the traditional one for us and set it up. All right, I'm going to start. This one really goes fast. The introduction didn't take long at all. And if you'll look, I have the center block, and I have a strip that goes to the right, because I'd laid my pieces out on a board, so I knew that the green would come next. So I'm going to take and fold that back over here. And this is important. You want to do a partial seam on this left-hand side, like start at the top and stop right here. So when you open this, that sort of flaps right now. Once you get that, you can either press your back seam to the side, or you can open it, which is what I did. Now we're going to work counterclockwise. So this is going to be an important place right here, and we're going to mark it in the next one. But right now we know where we are, so I'm going to take the other green, because I've got two of each color that goes on, and I'm going to stitch that all the way around. Okay, not only have I stitched the green on, I went ahead and did the light piece on the other side. And if you look, I have put a pin with a piece of paper, piece of anything you want right there, even just the pin, because we're going to need to know that's our starting point each time. So I went down and I added this part on all the way around, and now I've got a flap right there. That's the partial seam that's left to be seamed. I'm going to take and I'm going to shut that up. I'm doing my seams open, so I'm going to press that with my hand. So now I've sewn that seam right through there, and look at that. That is just perfect. There's no guesswork or anything. It fits perfectly. So now I'm going to be ready to add the next piece on. I'll grab it, Now I know because I had my colors set out, I know that the red is going to go on the dark side next. And you remember when I showed you the yellow square with your mark on it? All right, that's to tell you that this is the side that your partial seam's going to be on. So I'm going to take and I'm going to run a partial seam, and here you can do it anywhere. I usually go about halfway on this one, seemed to work well. Okay, and I've done the partial seam down that part. When I open it up, it's attached. It's got the little flap down there for where we're going to finish. And I know that I'm going to go and grab the other red that goes across the top and do it. And then I'm just going to sew the other two sides on. There's nothing fancy with those. You only have the partial seam at the very beginning of the block. And once I finish this row, then I'd start my very last, the dark rows on here. It took me longer to get everything set up than it is to do it right now. I'm going to go back. I made 3 more cutouts, and I'm going to start with those. Here's the board that I use that's got batting on it, just a piece of cardboard with batting on it, so that I can carry it to the sewing machine and I can lay things out like your planning wall. And so when I started this, though, I started with the color that was going to be on the outside edge. I started with the dark color, and that would have 2 bands. And then I said, what would I put that would go with that? And I said, I'm going to have the light at the other end side, so I put a light down over there. And I actually built mine from the outside into the middle. I didn't know what the middle color was going to be. Lots of times, if you have a color that you like, you can put that in the middle and let everything else work around it. But just remember, that's the only place you see it, unless you can work it back into one of your other strips. They're 2.5 inches. Trying to grab one of these other pieces, sticking together and not cut apart. Isn't that always right? And this is the color that goes in the next. And then my next color was the green. And I worked it in. And finally I said, okay, what's the center going to be? And the center ended up being the yellow. And then when I sewed everything together, this is the way it looked. And you can see I've got 3 sections of light and 3 sections of dark, and I've got the center in the middle. And the one thing I would remind you is that when you cut your pieces, if you can cut your strips so that they're grain with the grain, that means then that they won't stretch. That's going to help make your shape lay better when you get done. And sometimes you can't help that, and you just have to be careful not to stretch your fabric. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. Thank you for watching. Any notes that I have will be added in the description. For example, the number for this magazine that I was using. If you find this helpful or fun for you, please subscribe and hit like. Thank you.